Now some of you are a little bit uneasy because you're hearing me talk about something as precious to so many as Social Security, and you feel a little comfortable. Am I saying end Social Security? No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying those words, ask not what your country can do for you, have been broadened from an essential retirement safety net to an expense, my friends, that America can no longer fully bear when you include everything that's out there in those entitlements. You know, we have a $1.65 trillion deficit this year. This year. We can't imagine the number trillion. Let me try to break it down and make it a little bit simpler, but it's still almost unimaginable. With a $1.65 trillion deficit this year, that means today, on April 16th, the U.S. government will spend about $4.6 billion more than it takes in. Today. Our debt will grow $4.6 billion today, and it grew that much yesterday, the day before, it will do so tomorrow, the next day. I commented a few moments ago about some of these folks in D.C. are starting to get a spine a little bit, but I'll tell you, they still didn't have enough spine to accept a $38 billion cut, because $38 billion cut simply means, well, for 9 days in the budget, 9 days each year, we're going to balance the budget, and the other 356 days, we're going to keep going on with business as usual. That's not good enough. When we start to focus on those words, ask not what your country can do for you, it is about more than what individuals are asking of government. It's also about that proud system that we've all bragged on, that David was talking about, that is a vital part of America. It's about capitalism. Because, you know, I used to worry about Washington trying to run Wall Street. Anymore, I'm worried about Wall Street running Washington. It is the crony capitalism that allows businesses like General Electric, yes, like Chrysler Corporation, like General Motors, so many of our major corporations, insurance companies, and banks are getting whatever deal they want from the federal government. And those basic industries, which is to say small business, are being left behind. That is a dangerous thing when we see government picking and choosing winners and losers. That's not what the American government is about, and if you reread that American Constitution, you'll not find that in there either. Right. It isn't about, our country isn't about government picking who should win and who should lose. And when you think of it again, which side of John Kennedy's quote does that come on? Is that about what can government do for you? It certainly is. It's not about what you can do for government, what you can do for your country. We have an incredible challenge ahead of us, because while there can be 60 or 70 of us gather on a kind of blustery Saturday, the truth is most Americans are living their lives as if this stuff doesn't matter. And it does. It does. For this young man who just knew that little bit of a historical quote, you know, 9.5 years old, can you imagine when he's 60 years old like I am, what this country will be if we continue to ask government to provide all of our basic needs? You know, I'm a pretty optimistic person. I really am. I'm one of those people, to me, the glass is always half full. We'll always find a way. Let me tell you when the most depressing days I have come. In all the public speaking I'm privileged to do, I'm often asked to speak to college classes, to college groups, to high school seniors. And before I go, I always ask this question: what do you see yourself doing in a few years? And almost always, when I ask people to tell me what they want to do, they define jobs that are working for government. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing. But we can't all work for government. Somebody's got to be like Dave, the risk taker who goes out and starts his own business, who puts it on the line, who ends up employing 5,000 people. Just yesterday, I was just downriver from Tell City, Indiana, in a place called Corn Island Shipyards. Any of you ever heard of Corn Island Shipyard? Not a single hand just went up. They make barges. Now when I say barges, and I live in Evansville, I mean I see the Ohio River every day too. When you hear the word barges, you think of coal barges, right? Those big open top type barges going down the river. That's not the kind of barges they build at Corn Island Shipyard in Tell City, Indiana. In fact, just this week they're finishing up their latest barge. It's a barge that will move across the oceans 84,000 barrels of liquid asphalt at a time. Now liquid asphalt is a real tarry kind of substance. If it cools down, it forms into a giant block. So you don't just pour this stuff in the hold of a barge. No, you can't do that. There's a complex series of stainless steel tubes, coils, go all the way through that barge, and it's constantly having 400-degree oil pumped through it to keep that barge hot so that liquid asphalt never solidifies. That one barge is going to cost almost $20 million. And it's being built at Corn Island Shipyards because a few years ago, a guy by the name of Donnie Furch decided to take a chance. He went out to companies that were going bankrupt and started buying overhead cranes. He started buying advanced welding systems. He started buying metal brakes that bend heavy gauges of metal. He didn't even know what he was going to do with them. But he thought someday he'd find a use for them. Today he has 140 people there, making barges that will go from the Middle East back to the United States and all over the world. He took a chance. And I asked Donnie at the end of a conversation, if you had it to do all over again, would you do it? And he said, well, I don't like to sit still, so I probably would. But I don't know if I would risk quite as much because government's getting harder and harder to work with. Donnie Furch was somebody who was willing to take a chance, to take a risk. And when I ask those young people today, and I start to probe a little bit, why do you want to work for government? You know what the answer always is? Security. We have become a generation that looks to government. We ask government to provide for us security. And my friends, that is an un-American characteristic when you look at our history. It was Samuel Adams at the start of the American Revolution. And if you don't know much about Sam Adams, pick up a book on Sam Adams. He was once described as that quiet burning ember that forever kept the fires of revolution lit, even when others were losing their enthusiasm. He once said, if you prefer your wealth to your liberty, if you prefer leisure to the animated contest of freedom, leave us in peace. Bow down and kiss the hands that feed you. May your chains forever rest lightly upon you. And may our posterity forget that you were once our countrymen. Pretty bold statement. He divided himself between those who were willing to actively pursue liberty and those who were willing to take what others would give them. To coast along the easy path of life and take no chances. Many years later, Theodore Roosevelt said it well, dare great dreams. Far better it is to strive for glorious triumphs, even when checkered by failure, than to dwell with those poor souls who neither suffer much nor enjoy much. What can the Tea Party do in 2011 and 2012 and 13 and 14 and on into the future that you haven't done already? I think it is to become more than a political organization, but to become a community organization that promotes risk-taking. Promotes the fact that security is not something that should be guaranteed, but that liberty is something that should be provided. You're probably thinking, how can I do that? How can I make the difference? It is to talk to those young people right now who think that security is the end-all of life, because it isn't. I will tell you, back when I was studying invertebrate paleontology, and that's true, I really did do that. I used to love to spend hours looking through a microscope at microfossils, because it meant I didn't have to deal with people. It's true. It's true. My wife still says, and we met when I was in graduate school, my wife still says, whatever happened to my shy geologist? I love doing that. And if you had told me then that I would ever stand at a microphone and do this, that I would ever stand in front of a people and tell them with enthusiasm, and dare I say it, yes, fire and passion, that I want to be a United States Senator, if you'd ever told me that I would have done that in my life, I would have said that will never happen. But the point is, somewhere between then and now, I've learned that it is better to take a risk, to put yourself out on the edge, than to sit back and wait for somebody else to do something for you. Tea Party friends, please, as you stay involved, as you stay motivated, as you help candidates, try to broaden your impact. Be involved in every way in your community to remind people that freedom is not free. It is not easy. As Alexander Hamilton said, you know, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And I think we've been sleeping for a little bit too long. That's how you explain what happened in 2008. There were too many Americans who were ready to buy into that, oh, give me something, call it hope and change, as opposed to simply looking to government and looking to our Constitution to keep government away from our lives, not to put greater control over our lives. Why do we gather? It's a little bit of a pep talk for each other. You know, every one of us could be doing something different on this Saturday. But I hope, if nothing else here today, you leave here understanding that this is going to be a fight that lasts as long as this great experiment of American democracy continues. There will always be those on the other side who think someone else should do something for them, and it's up for us to remind them, my fellow Americans. Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. And if you don't know, the way that quote finally ended was, as Mr. Kennedy said, and to my fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but ask what we together can do for the freedom of all mankind. Thank you all.